guys, it's Aisha here, back with another video. I know it has been a minute, but that's sadly the way things have been rolling here lately. And this video is dealing with, once again, things Australia / Victoria / Melbourne, but it's gonna be a little bit different than the other videos. You know, the two videos I put out so far have been 5 things I love about living in Melbourne, and the second one was about 5 things that I don't like so much about living in, well, Victoria, but also Australia in general. If you've not seen those videos, you can definitely check them out. I will leave the links either up top here or at the bottom. But this video is more about what's coming. A lot of people have been messaging me, asking me about like how I got to Australia and how they can get to Australia. And I will be doing a separate video talking about how I personally got here. But this video is more about asking the question of whether or not it is the right move to make in at least the next year, 2022. I'm gonna give you 4 areas to consider around whether or not coming to Australia, but more specifically Victoria, would be the best move for you in 2022. And again, these are not necessarily a positive or negative. These are just facts of life, and you'll have to decide for yourself if that qualifies as a reason for you to continue with your plans to come here, or potentially put them on pause for the time being, or change your mind entirely. Now, I want to caveat this video and start off by saying these are just things that I've observed. This is, of course, based on my expat experience living here in Victoria the entire time I've been here. Others may have different experiences, different viewpoints. None of them are invalid or wrong. It's just my point of view. So just keep that in mind, because I know that on some of my other videos, some folks had some strong opinions one way or another. It's just things I've observed and things that I think are valid if you are outside of Australia, outside of Victoria, and considering coming here to make this your home. So the first thing to consider about Victoria in particular when it comes to potentially moving here is the fact that right now Victoria is the heavyweight champion as far as lockdowns are concerned, Melbourne in particular. I don't know if y'all have read the news or been catching up, but we just came out of a lockdown here in Melbourne just a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago now. And that was after being in one that was about 4 months long, but this was not our first or even our second. It was our 6th lockdown in Melbourne specifically, but all of Victoria experienced some level of lockdown at some point. Everything was closed. Retail stores, restaurants for indoor seating, like basically if it wasn't considered a necessity of life, it was closed down. And we had a curfew imposed. And there was also a regional restriction. It was literally like kind of being a prisoner here. Like you had to be in your home by a certain time, weren't allowed to go certain places, you weren't supposed to have people over. Like we're talking lockdown. Okay. And I kind of rolled into my second point in the first one, basically saying that Victoria / Melbourne may not be free of lockdowns in the future, even though we've done our hard time quite literally. It's not off the table. The Premier has already said that if there is another surge or spike in cases again, or with a new variant that's considered worse or more dangerous than the previous one, they seem to feel like that's the best way to handle things here. And yeah, as I said, I don't want to put it in the universe. I'm really hoping and praying that doesn't happen, but I think it's really something to consider that if that's something you don't want to go through, or it scares you, or it's just something you know you can't mentally, emotionally, financially afford to do, you should really consider whether or not this is the right state or city for you to move to if you come to Australia. Because that kind of rolls again into the third thing, which is that our premier right now and the government that's in place is actually seeking out more power. So like Thanos, he's trying to get all the rings, okay? To give it a summarization, because honestly you should read, like look up and read the articles that talk a little bit more about the bills that they're trying to pass. But basically the government here is trying to put something forward that's going to allow them to circumvent the normal parliament process for passing laws in regards to what they think is the best thing to do to handle this panorama and anything to do with it. So basically it kind of gives them godlike power as long as they're doing it under the umbrella of saying, hey, we're doing this for safety from Miss Rona. And that's a bit scary, because that means that, like I said, they could put anything in place. They could continue to enforce certain rules that people may not agree with. And essentially there's no way to kind of stop it, or there's no real gating system to make that kind of make people stop and pause and reconsider. And so again, this is not a judgment. This is not to have a debate over whether or not that's wrong or right. That's just something that is potentially going through. The point number 2 becomes far more likely potentially if these laws go through. So just keep that in mind again if you were thinking of coming here in particular. And the fourth point, which I think is probably the most contentious one, and I want to, again, I keep saying this because I know it's possibly going to get some people riled up, but it is around, Miss Nation. You don't know what I'm talking about. Miss Vax E Nation. Maybe you've heard of her. She's a bit popular at the moment. There are some goals that the country of Australia is trying to attain as far as people getting their double jab, but here they are dead serious. He has very specific goals for people getting their jab. His viewpoint is that everybody should get one. Everyone eligible should get their double jab. The freedoms, like I said, we came out of lockdown a few weeks ago, but it isn't a full relaxation for everybody. Basically, the freedoms that are being enjoyed right now, such as being able to go to a movie theater, sit in a restaurant, go to the gym, those types of things are only for people who can prove that they've gotten their double jab, which they tracked pretty securely here in Melbourne. If you don't have your double jab, there's still a lot of things you're not allowed to do legally. And at the moment, a lot of these businesses, like I've been to the movie theater, I've been to a few restaurants, etc. They're being pretty diligent about making sure that you have your vax certificate with you and you can prove that you've had your double jab. And if you don't, legally at the moment, they're not allowed to serve you or to allow you to enter the establishment or use those services. And it should be noted that, for example, in New South Wales, which is the state that's near neighbors Victoria, one of the states that neighbor Victoria, they are, as of December 1st, going to allow anybody, no matter what your status is as far as the jab, to enjoy all of these things. Whereas again, the government here in Victoria has decided that if you don't have your double jab, those restrictions are staying in place for the foreseeable future. As I said, I know that the jab conversation is a very contentious one. I'm not here to debate with anybody whether or not you choose to get your jab. I think it's a very personal decision that you've got to make for yourself and your loved ones if they're in your care. However, just know if you are thinking of coming to Australia, coming to specifically Melbourne or Victoria, if you are not jabbed, it's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. Victoria is on that jab stuff right now. So if that ain't you, you might want to consider going to other states in Australia and waiting until things change or seeing how things go into the next year. I talked about a bunch of things that might sound kind of negative, and I'm sorry if they come off that way. It's not so much a negative to me so much as just some things to consider. I know that people coming from different parts of the world, the way they've handled this whole situation has been very different. So they might have different opinions on what's right, wrong, easy to live with, hard to live with. You have to decide for you what's best, but I really think that people should consider this before they necessarily decide to invest time and energy into potentially trying to come here. I'm not saying don't come to Australia. This is still an amazing country. Maybe you can't come to Victoria or won't come to Victoria, Melbourne initially, but there's lots of other beautiful states here you could potentially go to and start your life here in Australia, and then depending on how things go in the future, you might find yourself back here later. So that's pretty much it for this video. It's not too long. Again, I just really want to point out some things that I think everyone should be aware of if you are outside of Australia right now and considering coming to Australia. If you are somebody who has met Miss Nation and you've got your double jab, most of this won't apply to you. You will be good to go as early as 2022. And if you are on the other side of that issue, or you haven't decided yet if you want to do that, you've got some food for thought now, so you can make a decision that's best for you and if your family is going to be accompanying you. So I really hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up. And if there's any other questions you might have or things you want to ask me about, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I'll try to get back to you guys as much as possible. As I said, I also wrote a blog post about this if you want a little bit more links to articles and other things that reference points that I got this stuff from. Please check that out if you are so inclined. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Thanks so much for coming back, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.